Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Risk Matrix with myself, Dr. Martin, and Mr. James Junkin. Hey, James.
Hey, roll tide. Summertime is here, baby. It's 88 outside right now. Look, short sleeves, baby,
Yeah,
short sleeves.
still 40, it's 40 here unless you're inside. So, so let's get to it. Thanks, Fair Force, for giving us this opportunity to bring weekly risk and safety topics to our audience. We are powered by them. We're thankful for their support. And here we go. Let's rip something from the headlines, James. What do you got?
Hey, something everybody in the world's talking about, this collision with the aircraft at LaGuardia, Air Canada flight. Um, I've flown a gazillion miles on those CRJ 900s, those regional flights. It colliding with a fire truck crossing an active runway. Huge safety process, safety management mistake, if you will. Definitely a failure. Killed the two pilots, injured several of the folks that were on board the aircraft, injured and severely the firefighters. It is by the grace of God that everybody didn't die. In the plane erupted in a huge fireball. So the NTSB is investigating this particular incident. There's already some information starting to come out about the fact that the fire truck was not equipped with the transponder. Some of the communications between the tower and the ground crew and the folks in the fire truck have been released. It's out there on the internet. You can find it. I found some of that very interesting. But what I also found interesting is our colleague, Dr. David Daniels, who's probably, I'd say, he wouldn't say this, I'm saying this, is one of the, at least in the United States at least, one of the leading voices on psychosocial hazards, psychological safety. And he's got a great article out. It's over on Substack. It's also on his LinkedIn page. Dr. Daniels, part of our strategic advisory board, longtime firefighter. So I know he felt this one in his soul when he penned Before the Sirens. And when he looked at an incident like this, really the causal factors for this happened way before this particular incident occurred. And I just encourage people to go over there and check out Dr. Daniels' piece on LinkedIn. Again, David Daniels, Before the Sirens. But one of his key takeaways is the precursors for this incident were way before this incident occurred. Understaffing at the FAA for air traffic controllers, an all crowded
Communication.
airspace, poor communication, um, lack of funding for upgrading systems to have these things like these transponders, significant near misses that are documented. So it's one of those things where you look at it and the totality of it was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. But for our listeners, one of the key takeaways, because not look, I'm a safety professional, but I don't practice safety in the airline industry or commercial aviation. But what's the takeaway for us? Dr. Daniels quoted in his article some work by Sidney Decker that said, usually when we're looking to blame someone, we blame the last person that touched the system. Man, that hit me like a ton of bricks. And that seems to be true. You know, when you look at incident investigations, who is the person that always gets blamed and retrained or whatever is the last person to touch the system before the system failed.
Right.
What do you think about
Right.
that?
I mean, you're talking about precursors to this incident. Wasn't just, this precursor and this precursor and this precursor. It was a bunch of things in each of the areas, right? In the communication area, in the psychological safety area, in the mental health, I mean, just a just a plethora of things that came together to affect this tragedy, right? And the one thing that I took away when I was looking at the articles about this is everybody's looking for blame, right? They're looking for blame in the air traffic controller that told the fire truck to go ahead. They're looking at the communication systems. I'm not so sure that it was the last person in the system. They're just looking to blame, right? We want to know who did this. And, um, if we look at system safety, everybody did this, right? Everybody did this. This was a combined effort um, that got us to this one incident. And we could have, you know, we're not genies, as we like to say, right? But we could have predicted that something like this would eventually happen, given the way that things were being handled prior to.
I mean, they're just repeated warnings I mean, this has been in the media, you know. Here's a quote from CNN going back to earlier in 2005. A pilot wrote to LaGuardia's operational executives there about the operational tempo that had become unsafe. Quote, please do something. The pace of operations is building at LGA. The controllers are pushing the line. And I really felt for that controller who watched this incident happen and said, I made a mistake, you know, and immediately the pilot responded and said, no, you did the best you could. Whether he made his mistake or not is irrelevant. The system should be able to survive a human being's mistake. One mistake like that should not lead to disaster. And this was disaster. I mean, two are dead, but it could have been loss of not only the two pilots, but loss of everybody that's on board that aircraft, everyone that was involved in the fire truck operations. It could have skidded off and hit other aircraft. I mean, it could have been it was already a mass casualty incident, but it could have been a mass fatality incident. So I think there are a lot of lessons that we can learn from this incident about looking at these precursors. The system is telling you, the workers are telling you. Uh, I got an article out today in our newsletter about listening to the workers. They will tell you if you will listen, just if you'll listen. But that's gonna hit.
Agreed. Agreed. Okay, so let's roll into our show, James. We're going to talk today about something that you wrote about, and I think is near and dear to many of our listeners' hearts, and that is supporting not only our troops through uh, Epic Fury as that goes on, the spouses and support personnel that are left behind, and then also operating businesses in this new climate that we're in, or at least the temporary climate while we're at war.
However you want to define this, when someone is shooting at our troops, that's war. Okay. The rest of us can debate what it is from a definition of a military campaign, special operation, or whatever, but we're in active conflict with Iran at this moment. Now, by the time this airs, it may be settled. However, the ripple effects of what's going on in Operation Epic Fury are going to continue, particularly as it relates to the supply chain, right? And we'll talk about that in a moment. But I want to talk for a moment about workers whose families serve in the military and how we can support them, regardless of what your politics are. I don't care what your politics are, right? These folks that serve in the military wear the uniform of the United States of America. They go where they're told. And we owe it to the families to be there and support them. I remember back during the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq. I used to tell people the country's not at war. The military's at war. Their families are at war. We're not at war. We're at the mall. We're at the ball game. We're worried about the Super Bowl. We're taking care of things here at life. The war to us is something we see on television, but they live it. They live it every day. I was talking to um, a lady that works in the Air Force that I really admire. This is her husband is deployed in Operation Epic Fury in the Army. This is her first time as a spouse to go through a deployment. First time they've been separated on a deployment, and it happens to be a combat deployment. She's trying to do her work at the same time trying to support the other spouses and families of their unit, be a good wife, be a good mother. So there's a lot going on in those people's lives. I think as a employer, we need to make now allowances for that. We need to make accommodations for that. It's not because it's just the right thing to do. It's also the patriotic thing to do. We need to take care of our families. Well,
Well, and then let's just tie this into the workplace, right? I mean, I get all that, but you know, all these feelings and that the spouses and support people back here in the states are going through. We have things in place that can reduce risk for companies as they um, support these workers, right? And that goes to our mental health, our EAP plans, making sure that you know just because they're the ones staying home doesn't mean that they're not feeling things that they don't feel before. They're not maybe not thinking straight while they're doing high hazard tasks. But those are the kinds of things that we need to support here first and foremost because they are sacrificing with their families being overseas, but also to protect the work that they do with companies and their coworkers as they try to keep it all together.
absolutely. And so I think part of that, if you've paid attention to what's going on globally over the last few years, ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, you're starting to see a shift away from well organized terrorist attacks like 9/11, more toward lone wolf attacks like you saw in New Year's Day down here in New Orleans, where an ISIS inspired terrorist drove a vehicle down Bourbon Street running over people. Uh, that threat level is only going to increase as we continue to be engaged in Operation Epic Fury. It was already increasing if you looked at some of the things that came out of Homeland Security. So, as a safety professional, I'm responsible for implementing our safety management system to protect our workers, right, from physical threats. Well, this is a physical threat. Workplace violence is known physical threat, but when we think of workplace violence, we think of someone um, maybe coming back, disgruntled employees, something of that nature. We never think of it in a global sense of terrorism. So if you are being proactive within your safety management system, you need to think about vulnerabilities from these lone wolf actors. So denial of access, we've talked about this before in workplace violence, keeping people out of the facilities, training folks on the FBI's recommendations of run, hide, fight. What's our emergency action plan should something occur?
What's our business continuity
Our
plan,
business
right? I
continuity
mean,
plan. And I was talking about this to several the other day. It's very concerning for me the drone activity that we've seen uh, in Ukraine and that we've seen in Epic Fury with Iran. These are nation states using drones. But if if someone was within the United States and was a terrorist, they could launch drone activities into some of our critical infrastructure, such as chemical processing plants, refineries. Those things don't do well when the containment is breached, and now we've got fires, we've got explosions, we've got releases. So I don't think I'm giving anyone any ideas out there. This has all been part of threat assessment, but the use of one-way attack drones, this is real. This is in our environment, and most of our um, chemical plants are readily accessible, from the air.
so let's go ahead.
I was going to say, if you're a safety professional, I don't know how we defend about that, but that ought to be something that's on your risk register at a plant, and you should be talking about that and seeking the guidance of experts and perhaps um, support within your local homeland security departments, your emergency preparedness organizations within your counties or within your parishes to at least get the topic on the table and begin discussing what responses might be.
Yeah, and let's transition that into how does this affect our supply chain, James? Um, you know, when we lose critical infrastructure or we lose access to resources that we need in order to keep the trains running, so to speak. Where do we usually feel that?
Well, the first place you're going to see this in this instance is going to be rising oil prices, which are going to affect diesel fuel prices. Now, in the U.S., we're energy secure. Uh, Very little of our oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz. I think news is reporting less than 2%. And certainly we can absorb 2% production increase to replace that in the United States. We're good. We may pay more. We may pay
I
more.
was gonna say it's way more than 2% what we're paying.
Yeah, we may pay more because of the way oil is traded on the global market, but you're about to see some countries run out no matter what they pay for it. If it's not there, it's not there. Now, I lived through the long lines during the 70s of rationing when we went through this with the oil embargoes with Iran back in the 1970s. That was not fun. Some countries are preparing for that right now. The Philippines is preparing for that. Pakistan has put out some alerts, perhaps even the Japanese. So while we may have energy here at home and we may have available fuel sources related to primarily diesel fuel, because diesel fuels the trucks bring us our supplies, even though we're paying for it, if our supply chain extends globally, and a lot of our supply chain does extend globally, it may be affected, which means
Yeah.
you
So
may be
so
seeing a shutdown like we did during COVID.
let me kind of put this into context, that I see because I work a lot in the construction industry, right? When fuel prices rise for whatever reason, right? I mean, I know you kind of gave the long version, but to us here at home, all we see is rising prices, right? And diesel is a big part of the construction industry when it comes to delivery, keeping the supply chain going, getting our materials, running the plants to make the materials, et cetera, right? And so how I see this trickling down is especially in the arena that I work is that, when one thing rises, especially on existing bids within a supply chain, right? You have to make that up some other way, right? And a lot of times that some other way goes with not using the materials that you plan to use, maybe using something different, something cheaper, maybe something not quite as safe. Give an example of, you may use uh, natural, organic, whatever solvents on whatever you usually do for your processes. But now it's easier to get something else, and it's a little bit more hazardous. But that kind of balances out what you're spending on the diesel fuel, and so these are the places that I see impacting our actual workers. Right, that they're expecting business as usual when companies are not being business as usual. They're trying to save costs in other ways. And then you also have, you know, we got to squeeze here. And so we got to do things quicker, faster, cheaper, be more productive, right? And we all know what happens when we cut one of the legs of the three-legged stool, right? Um, accidents start to happen.
Well, I think that's sort of the call out from this article is we know this from past experience, whether it was previous war, whether it was the pandemic, whether it was rising prices back when oil was $140 a barrel back in 2014. We know that these issues are coming. So it's time to plan for that, right? What's my
Yes.
material substitution plan? If I can't get this, what's this? Where are we drawing the line when it comes to fatigue management, which is what you're talking about? We've got people, we're compressing schedules, we're going to work overtime, we're going to get this done because we need to get it done quicker because our hard dollar bid is now being compressed financially because we didn't account for rising diesel fuel prices, right? So this is where things like your management of change process comes into place. If we can't get the right material that we normally get, and we've got to go to a secondary supplier, has that supplier been vetted? Are we getting apple for apples? So having a disciplined approach to what some trigger points are. Um, what are how are we going to attack this proactively to make sure that we are looking at what the risks are. For example, one of the very first things I see happen is all of these maintenance periods that are scheduled, unless it's required by regulation, the first thing that's going to happen is it's going to get deferred. It's going to get put off, right? So then we're stretching our preventive maintenance intervals a little bit longer. You know, we're not doing everything we're supposed to do for inspections on cranes. We're not, oh man, prices are up. Can we put off the fire extinguisher inspections another quarter? Now that may seem simplistic unless we need to use the fire extinguisher all of a sudden it doesn't work. Mobile equipment, pressure systems, things of that nature that normally we go out and do these routine inspections for, they tend to get pushed off when we have pressures economically. So,
Mhm.
if I'm in a chemical plant, if I'm in a refinery, we need to really think about what we're doing when we have deferred maintenance and at least cover the critical maintenance, the critical.
And if you've ever been involved in the turnarounds, refinery turnarounds, and I know you have, right? And I have been for a couple. Um, they find quite a lot when they go to turn around a lot of this equipment, and pushing out those maintenance schedules is a big deal. And just to your note about fuel prices and what I said about construction, people don't really realize that one of the biggest costs that go into a bid in a construction situation, especially when you're carting things in and out of a city, is the fuel, right? So that's something in a bid that it is what it is. You got to get things in and out. So they are compressing all of these and putting pressure points on different areas, and making the workers work harder with less and different things, maybe with not as much training or not as much information that they need in order to stay safe.
And let's be honest, one of the first things that's going to get cut is the safety budget. That's been my experience for 30 years, maybe yours a little bit longer, is the safety budget is going to take a hit along with everyone else's budget. It's not always just safety. We talk about safety budgets getting cut back because we're in safety, but usually this is going to be across the board cut. So we have to learn to do more with less. Now, in doing that, that means less coverage. Usually it's personnel. That means deferred training or no training. You know,
Mhm.
at least at the bare minimum, companies are doing the regulatory training, we hope. This all filters down into your supply chain of your contractors and your subcontractor. They're going to be the ones that feel it the first, right? Because excuse me, they're the ones on a tighter budget. They're the ones that are performing the work task. So uh, I think that that's something you have to prepare for. So if you're looking at a contractor with having where the risk lies, and we know we're increasing the risk during these times, we should plan for that and increase inspections. We should have honest conversations with our contractors and determine what acceptable risk is to us, right? Um, I just, the war may go on for a month, it may go on for 3 months, it may go on for 3 more years. Who knows? We have no idea. But the one thing that I'm 100% certain about is this rising fuel costs and the rising availability uh,
Of materials.
supply of material in the supply chain will have impact to us in the United States and around the world. 100%.
100%. So, I mean, this is just a cautionary tale. I mean, I don't think this is James and I not knowing what goes on. I was around during the fuel crisis in the '70s too. These things go in cycles, and I think you did draw a really good analogy between what happened during COVID. We saw the shutdown, we lost materials, uh, prices went up, costs of doing business go up, and we start to see more accidents and incidents, and that's what we don't want to do. So adjust your risk profiles, take a look at your risk registers, make sure that you're looking at things that could be coming down the pipe, because we don't know how long this is going to last, but let's keep an eye on it.
And I think having that conversation now and putting it on the table and saying, look, these are some things that we cannot cut. What are our sift controls? Okay, if we work at heights, our sift controls fall protection. So we can't cut fall protection, right? We can't cut our controls that we use for confined space entry or the things that we're doing for hot work. Gas detection, me and you was talking about gas detection. What came to mind a couple days ago. Those are non-negotiable. If we're going to perform the task, we have to have that. So we need to budget for those SIF controls and put a fence around it. That way they can't be defunded without executive level approval. Then I think you need to look at and talk to procurement to make sure that when we can't get that 3M N95 mask that we use for our silica, that
That
whoever
you have options.
or is an equivalent, and we've already set up who that option is. If that wasn't a lesson learned in COVID, I don't know what will teach us those lessons, right? That our supply chains are global. And then go through and look at your preventive maintenance and say what can be deferred and what must be done. We have to do it. And then just having good communication and being real with the contractor. Uh, Contractors are getting squeezed right now because their cost is going up and probably their payment terms are not. The price that they bid out is probably not going up. So they may be forced to try to do more in a quicker time, which leads to fatigue. It leads to, maybe increased turnover, all these things that come when you squeeze someone financially. So I think it's time right now, while we're not in an emergency situation, let's get it on the table and talk about it, put it on the risk register and have a plan. That's my
Yeah.
advice.
And hey, James, let's support those troops and the people here at home that are supporting them, because that's what makes the world go round. So
Absolutely.
thanks again to our listeners for listening to this episode. We could talk about this for a long time. I think you get our gist here with looking at the things that we asked you to look at, the risk register, um, making sure that you're looking at your preventative maintenance, making sure that you're looking at your supply chain, that you have options, and that you're not making decisions that are going to cost you in SIFs or PSIFs down the road. James, you want to take us out?
Absolutely. Hey, thank y'all for being loyal listeners and supporters of the Risk Matrix. In fact, we want to support and give a shout out to our biggest fan, VeriForce. Without VeriForce, this doesn't happen. Thank you, VeriForce, for what you do to bring workers home safe. But also thank you to our listeners. We do this for you. We're available there on LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Hey, Siri, play me some Risk Matrix, baby. We'll pop up there for you. If you would love to support the podcast, the best way you can do it, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Hey, if you learned something today, give us that like. If you
Tell
found,
your friends.
if you found something interesting, hit that subscribe button, hit that share button, spread the word. That way it gives us visibility in the
Sorry, I don't
algorithm and it
understand.
helps us. It helps us. My phone's going off because I said the S word, right? But we thank you, appreciate what you do to bring workers home safe from high hazard jobs. Until next time, roll tide, baby. We're out.
Tide.